This week, we're back in the swing of things just in time to send you off for 2015. After watching our Best of Paris coverage last week, get a little glimpse of what's to come for the global climate movement in 2016. Also, I promised a while back that we'd get back to the Chamber of Commerce. So let's dig through the history of this corporate lowlife scum. And finally, Agunda Okeyo talks art and activism from the global Black female perspective. But first, inspired by Paris, let us walk on silent ground. This is silent ground. We care little for your sacred ground. A distant church bell sounds, echoes. The silence rebounds. What did you hope your screaming would make? It cannot build empires like we crush and trade. It will not stand when rolling tanks curl that silent ground to meet your fate. You have no power. But your call, you have no hope save that we fall. Optimists will slowly drown in blinding smiles that made their crown. There is no upswing, inherent rise, no head-on progress. This way up, no destined signs. There is but fight and dignified resolve. On these old pillars all corruption does dissolve, but pillars crumble, likewise so our fight. The light that brought us here grows dim with talk of idle things. Gods and sin, our minds get comfy in the slowly rising tide. Like frogs to jump from boiling waters so prescribed by our own shrugs that cook our bodies, soul, and mind. On this silent ground, the graves of hope lay waiting. A madman at the end, pennies for the contemplating. Waves crash hard, regret won't hold your breath. These earthly scars shrug this human pest whose arrogance bought favor with the pests named king, thinking as they dug holes and fenced things in that money would yet save them. One can but smile to remember all that they forgot, that of this planet only people can be bought. So who's at fault? As gorges form and swallow what we've wrought, who to blame, who to point at, kill and maim? Folly's just the same. On repeat we play, looking back we see this vicious game, but as we gaze through this here day, nothing seems to parallel these age-old ways that don't end well because they never end. We pause to say a prayer for all of those who lost their lives, but what we should lament, deride, is all of those who've lost the will to live their lives, to fight for what is right, to look up to the sky and see the blackened clouds for what they are, not demons from afar, but demons made on silent grounds that we did shush to keep us down. From 6 feet under minds to writhe, common sense, intelligence, the simple thought that makes you want to scream. That here we are, the many lying down, while few do sprinkle dirt from golden shovels we uncovered, now covering our sounds. Yes, we are the powerless, and therein lies our power. We are not on pedestals, grounded yet we cower. Top-heavy falls with ease, all we need to do, push. Build a fire from the mire, yes, light that pyre, burn the apathetic hordes, let flames lick silence from these early graves. Yes, we who made the silent ground by letting vapid fuck profound, and from this violent rape of mind came the sorry, apathetic mound. We who let this happen must now move earth with this new sound. Not a scream or a single voice profound, we must draw new lines, and with our shackles make a human chain. Remain before the tanks of apathy and corporate shills that shoot to kill. From the silent ground, move, so that the earth will shake, quake, and from these rhythms make the sound that breaks the silent ground. Turn it up. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. As you saw from last week's Best of Paris episode, activists not only took to the streets, but took over the streets. I wasn't able to be everywhere at once, but even what I was able to share with you was but a portion of the loads of tremendous actions that took place during the UN Climate Summit. Now, as evidenced by what came out of the climate talks, our work is so just beginning, and I know it's a favorite play of bitchers and moaners to say, oh, what's it matter? It obviously didn't do any good anyway. First of all, get off your ass and do something about your sad outlook on the world. Secondly, au contraire. What these actions in Paris did was build momentum. More than 20,000 people flooded the streets of Paris on December 12th. And that's with a protest ban still in place. What happened in Paris is vital. Connections were made, networks strengthened, alliances solidified, and a strong show of people power was displayed. So already planned for next year are a series of workshops, trainings, and marches, leading up to a huge month of action in May. The goal? To break free from fossil fuels and all that comes with them. To use our bodies and our voices to physically disrupt the fossil fuel industry. What will this look like? Well, it'll look like the Ende Gelände action we mentioned in episode 30. It'll look like pipeline blockades that help shut down part of KXL. It'll look like fracking rig occupations. It'll look like things we haven't seen before. The continued creative efforts of people who are not waiting around for bought-off politicians to sound the alarm. Why would they? After all, they like that silent ground. I mean, for fuck's sake, just 2 days after the climate talks in Paris wrapped up, our Congress announced a bill to lift the 40-year ban on crude oil exports, the political equivalent of pistol-whipping liberty and justice, while simultaneously jacking off big oil with lubed-up pages of the Constitution. Can't unvisualize that. The actions surrounding COP21 were just the beginning, as I said. Now it's time to keep going, to escalate. Actions are planned worldwide, from Nigeria to Canada to Spain to Palestine to the Philippines, and more are on the way. This is civil disobedience. This is climate justice now because we can't wait any longer. To learn more about these actions and to sign up to be a part of this from the beginning, visit breakfree2016.org. See you in May on the front lines. Okay, so moving on. You may remember from episode 39 that I bashed the Chamber of Commerce for being absolute dickbags and corporate tools. As interested in the middle-class growth of this economy as I am in having bedbugs again. Well, I'm circling back, as promised, to intro you to this week's lowlife scum.
You lowlife scum.
In recent history, the Chamber of Commerce has poured millions into influencing elections for their elite crop of 1% members. But despite this egregious pay-to-play uncovered lately, corruption is kind of an old game for the Chamber of corporatocracy. Corporatocracy. That's a lot. Indeed, their corruption dates back further to low-life scum Lewis Powell, a corporate lawyer and COC advisor who also served on the Supreme Court between 72 and 86. In 71, he jotted down a little memo, now known as the Powell Memo. This twisted turd of oligarchical shit is largely to thank for the legal precedent on which Citizens United was argued. It is also a loud call to use any means necessary to quell student and leftist uprising, as these threaten the economic stability of our nation. In fact, it's a loud call to quell any dissent of any kind through the use of propaganda and tightly controlled media. See, this is all live, on the fly. It is also a call to arms, on behalf of and by the largest corporations in the country. Using language you might find in a scene from Rudy, if Rudy was an evil, plutocratic, sociopathic, fucked up fat cat, Powell wrote, "The time has come, indeed it is long overdue, for the wisdom, ingenuity, and resources of American business to be marshaled against those who would destroy it. What specifically should be done? The overriding first need is for businessmen to recognize that the ultimate issue may be survival. Survival of what we call the free enterprise system, and all that this means for the strength and prosperity of America and the freedom of our people." And here is where the Chamber of Commerce comes into play. But independent and uncoordinated activity by individual corporations, as important as this is, will not be sufficient. Strength lies in organization, in careful long-range planning and implementation, in consistency of action over an indefinite period of years, in the scale of financing available only through joint effort, and in the political power available only through united action and national organizations. The role of the National Chamber of Commerce is therefore vital. And as if this weren't enough, Powell then ties the Chamber's role into his issue with campus uprisings. The Chamber should consider establishing a staff of highly qualified scholars in the social sciences who do believe in the system. The staff of scholars should evaluate social science textbooks, especially in economics, political science, and sociology. This should be a continuing program. And holy fuck, it does not end there. The national television networks should be monitored in the same way that textbooks should be kept under constant surveillance. This applies not merely to so-called educational programs, but to the daily, quote-unquote, news analysis, which so often includes the most insidious type of criticism of the enterprise system. Radio and the press are also important, and every available means should be employed to challenge and refute unfair attacks, as well as to present the affirmative case through these media. Yeah, Orwell called. He wants his nightmare back. Powell goes on to suggest a much more intense mobilization in the political arena, and then, as if prophesying his steaming pile of toxic sludge legacy, laced with dead babies and endangered species, Powell aims directly at our Constitution. Under our constitutional system, especially with an activist-minded Supreme Court, the judiciary may be the most important instrument for social, economic, and political change. This is a vast area of opportunity for the chamber if it is willing to undertake the role of spokesman for American business, and if, in turn, business is willing to provide the funds. And oh, were they willing, and oh, did they find the funds. Keep in mind, what I've shared with you here are but pieces of the memo. I strongly urge you to read the whole thing, with a vomit bag nearby, because you'll see almost point by point a modern-day outline of our system, the straight-up blueprint for everything from the dumbing down of our education system to mass surveillance to the buying of everybody in the political realm. Now, as with anything in history, it is impossible to tie our grossly unequal corporatocratic system to just one sick fuck's memo, but it is impossible to ignore these stark connections. It's impossible to ignore the influence of a man planted in both the Chamber of Commerce and the Supreme Court, to shift policy and shut down dissent. If history is connecting dots, holy shit, this is a minefield of dots. You see the path that brought us to Fortune 100 CEOs meeting with the president more than 1,000 times since 2009. The most frequent visitor being the CEO of military contractor company Honeywell. Sounds cute. They're the ones currently enjoying billions of dollars worth of contracts from the Pentagon. You see the path that brought us to the Supreme Court deciding on whether companies really are allowed to extort money from customers, really regardless of whether what they're doing is legal or not. You see the red thread through all of our issues that stem, again, not from just that memo, but from the ideologies couched within it. Powell is certainly not the first capitalist cunt to pen his plans for 1% domination, but he is among the more famous ones. And if you look at his political career and his ties to politicians currently running our system, it really isn't surprising that we're in the state of affairs that we're in. Now, I didn't share this as a huge downer. I share it with you for several reasons. First off, it happened. It's our history, and thanks to the man himself, you might not actually be learning much about it. Secondly, it shows the depth and breadth of systemic corruption that affects every aspect of our lives, every single issue. And therefore, here's the silver lining, because of this, all of our movements are necessary. From the fractivists to the feminists, they are necessary and they have to work together. I know that I've said this before, and I will say it again. We on the left like to crowbar each other out. Well, that's not really my type of feminism, or I think that only vegans can be true environmentalists. Stop it. The far-reaching socio-political destruction of the Powell paradigm demands that we have to work together. I know it's the holidays, and you'll hear a lot of this peace on earth and love thy neighbor bullshit, but I mean this in all seriousness. I don't give a fuck what day it is or what season. Call it a New Year's resolution if it makes you feel better, but pick that issue, find your allies, and move forward together. Powell might be dead, but the Chamber of Commerce and people like Powell are alive and well, and they have armies of dipshits behind them. Organized, dedicated, and focused armies that look a lot like that, but with suits. If we have a chance at shifting this system, we have to be just as organized, dedicated, and focused. And that might sound like some Rudy shit as well, but god damn it, sometimes we all need a little pep talk. So get out there and fight. On the front lines, in the back streets, fight, 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 and keep fighting. There's plenty of low-life scum to go around.
You low-life scum.
Now then, wrapping up today, I want to introduce you to Agunda Okeyo, a woman who fights said low-life scum using a myriad of creative mediums and her quote-unquote panoramic awareness, born from a multicultural background and an avid enthusiasm for knowledge, culture, and giving a shit. Take a look. So you mentioned on your site, you mentioned having a panoramic awareness due to your work with various organizations. Talk a little bit about the panoramic awareness.
So I grew up in New York City. I'm originally from Kenya. But I did grow up here in New York, and as I know, what I know of Kenya is from Nairobi, and I was bicultural till I was about 12. And when you're an immigrant kid, a lot of times, if you maintain a relationship with your identity from your home country, you're usually looking at things at more than one angle at a given time. And then if you have any other kind of awarenesses or consciousness, if you're an artist, you'll have a perspective as an artist. If you're an introvert, you'll have an introverted perspective. If you're an extrovert, you'll have an extroverted perspective. And then, growing up in New York City, all of my friends, genuinely speaking, are from all over the world. So I have very close, like intimate relationships with people from all over the world. So it's kind of given me a recognition and awareness of a lot of contradictions that kind of cover all cultures and people. And I also have learned a lot about very specific cultural biases.
So going back to what you talked about, how you have friends and from so many different places, and it's this panoramic awareness brought by your own experiences and then experiences with friends in New York City. How important do you think it is that American kids get out of their bubbles and either see the world physically or see the world by interacting with people from around the world? How important do you think that is?
It's so important because a lot of the problems that I have with people in this country, and I think a lot of immigrants and people who are perceived to be different from the status quo of what it means to be American, which is usually being a white man. A lot of that ignorance comes from people just not being aware that the world is not a white world. Like, we don't live in a white world. The world is really black and brown. That's the predominantly what's going on. And then furthermore, over the course of the past, probably even just the last 300 years, the ways that we've gotten so intertwined with one another, linguistically, our languages, our culture, what we eat, how we talk, it's so different. Even now, when people think of Africa, when they think of Kenya, it's so far behind what is actually going on there. It's kind of fascinating because, you go to Kenya, the kids are wearing straight jeans and have a mohawk that's painted, that's like bleached blonde, just like a kid in Brooklyn would be, But they're very proud to be African, and they are African, and they're in their own culture, speaking their own language. So the more that people have that kind of understanding of the nuance, across culture, you really have much more effective policies, and people be outraged at the most appropriate moments because they'll see the humanity of that other person in that other country or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like you said, so many issues stem from just the simple foundational problem that we look at others as others. They're not our friends. They're not our kids or our parents. They're others. So we can pity them. We could pity a refugee, but we wouldn't go out of our way to help them or anything because they're other people and they're not like us.
It's an imperial ideology, I think, that hurts everyone involved, in my opinion and my experience. So, Americans would even feel safer in this world if they knew to themselves be like a bigger part of it, So, that's kind of my take on it.
And in your experience as well, is this mindset, is this paradigm something that's typically American? Do you see this sort of those other people? Do you see that with the places that you've lived or the cultures that you've worked with?
Well, that's a great question. And also that's a question I probably wouldn't get typically, to tell you the truth. Most people wouldn't even think to ask. So thanks a lot, Eleanor.
Thank you.
Well, I think human beings are inclined towards tribalism. I'll tell you a story. Like, even when I first started growing up here in New York, it took me a long time to call myself a New Yorker. I only started calling myself a New Yorker, I think, when I was 25 or something like that. So for years, I used to look at people in New York and be like, wow, these people are very myopic sometimes, because everyone would get stuck in their borough, stuck in their neighborhood. And I used to tell people for a long time that I thought New Yorkers are more tribal than most Kenyans. This country and this culture really needs to work on its awareness of how people really kind of run over one another, and how that creates a new thing sometimes. And also how it's not also bad to have reverence for where you come from and your own language and culture. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, But, and ask people, I'm like, where are you from? And, a lot of times people didn't know. I remember talking to people and they had no idea. And I remember finding that confounding, Because I was like, how do you not know? Because it influences who you are, right?
Right.
So, and then, in the process of talking to people and reading American history, you really realize that through the actual systemic process of assimilation and intimidation throughout this country, especially you notice with a lot of people who could assimilate into whiteness, like people who could become who were of European descent, who could become what they call white. They often completely erased like where they came from or what they knew of where they came from. Some people know it in terms of like kind of ancestral breakdown. I'm a quarter this, an eighth that, or whatever. But in terms of sometimes even specific history, language, food, culture, it was completely taken away. And in some parts of the country, people were intimidated. So they don't even talk about it. If you talk to some of them, they have this almost like PTSD or something. Start asking them about where they're from. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is deep. I mean, also because just the process of becoming white is just so inherently unfair and unequal, even to white people. So it's like you're being put into a system that's fundamentally outstripping you of your humanity and outstripping other people of their humanity.
Hey, like it never happened. Okay, well, perfect. Because I was about to segue into my question, my final question about your book. It said that you're on your site. You said that you're about to publish a book in 2016 about your experiences with systemic inequality, which we've talked about. In particular, though, critical of formal education, which is something that we haven't really talked about. I mean, we talked about like history being whitewashed and redacted. But specifically, like, talk a little bit about this book that you're doing and talk a little bit about why specifically formal education.
Well, so, I guess maybe I'll start at the why education part. One thing I don't think I fully understood about what education is that it's just another form of assimilation. And I love to learn, and I was a good student, and I went pretty far along and went to a really great Ivy League college. And when I was in that school, I had some serious problems with systemic racism. So I had certain experiences in college that were so contradictory to logic and to what I knew of myself as a human being that radicalized me around issues of race and how the actual system of education perpetuates and inculcates people with certain kind of toxic ideas around what race is and why race matters and that how that fits into what America is. So the book really comes out of that, and a lot of the struggle of writing the book comes with how to communicate that to people without boring them, because a lot of people find nonfiction material, particularly in this culture, to be very kind of daunting to deal with because everyone's usually engaged in some sort of fantasy.
Very true.
So like with the book, it's just trying to find different ways to speak about what I just spoke about, but make it relatable and and also kind of make people feel that as much as we need to be aware of the problems we have, solutions are not far behind when you become aware. So you have to be aware, So I'm hoping the book can contribute to some conversation. These issues are all like really important, vital issues, but just as the struggle a lot of times is trying to figure out ways to get people to really understand how important they are, and that, sometimes taking the easy way out, meaning, not addressing or dealing with stuff because it makes you feel bad, actually is probably the highway to hell, when you really think about it, because you're essentially just putting things off that aren't going anywhere and it's going to continue to kind of mushroom.
To learn more about Agunda and her work, check out agundaokeyo.com. Also, as an addendum to her segment, she wanted to bring up the shirt that she was wearing during our interview. Not sure that you can quite see the whole thing there, but it says, "Music is not a weapon, hatred is." In 2012, Jordan Davis was shot and killed at a gas station in Florida when a man opened fire on him and his friends for having the music on too loud in their car. The white gunman later claimed that he was shooting in self-defense against the unarmed black teenagers. The documentary 3.5 minutes, 10 bullets explores these events from that evening, as well as the criminal justice system that handles this case and many others like it. You can see a link to the documentary at the end of the show. And that, revolutionaries, is that. I myself will be having a very atheist Christmas, and I hope that you all have a wonderful week off and celebrate whatever it is that you want to celebrate. If you're looking for something, though, might I suggest that you toast to a solid year of activism and do some stretches to get ready for yet another one. There will not be a show airing next week, so I definitely encourage you to take some time away from computers and tablets and phones and anything that can remind you of all of the work to come. Take that time off. So on that note, thank you so much for watching, commenting, and reaching out. It's always awesome to hear from all of you, whether it's a question or a comment, so don't be shy. Also awesome that you continue to share the show with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know. As always, check out the last slide to see all of the sites that I mentioned in this week's show. There will also be a link to help support Occupy.com and all of the delicious dissent delivered daily thanks to donations like yours. It is a 501c3, so anything that you can contribute is tax deductible and hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From the Devil's Den doing its best to be cheerful, good night and act out.